I don't need to tell the people on this stage that presidential politics is an interactive business, and of course this debate is interactive as well. And we have an email question, I'm happy to say, emailed into the National Journal, and it comes from Stephen Shafroth of the Dells, Oregon. And I'd like to address this question to Mr. Kaine. Stephen writes, I served on an aircraft carrier during the Vietnam War. I believe that torture is always wrong in all cases. What is your stance on torture?
I believe in following the procedures that have been established by our military. I do not agree with torture, period. However, I will trust the judgment of our military leaders to determine what is torture and what is not torture. That is the critical consideration.
Mr. Kaine, of course, you're familiar with the long-running debate we've had about whether waterboarding constitutes torture or is it an enhanced interrogation technique. In the last campaign, Republican nominee John McCain and Barack Obama agreed that it was torture and should not be allowed legally, and that the Army Field Manual should be the methodology used to interrogate enemy combatants. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree, sir?
I agree that it was an enhanced interrogation technique.
And then you would support it as president. You would return to that policy.
I would return to that policy. I don't see it as torture. I see it as an enhanced interrogation technique.
Congresswoman Bachmann, your opinion on this question that our emailer asked.
If I were president, I would be willing to use waterboarding. I think it was very effective. It gained information for our country. And I also would like to say that today, under Barack Obama, he is allowing the ACLU to run the CIA. You need to understand that today, when we interdict a terrorist on the battlefield, we have no jail for them. We have nowhere to take them. We have no CIA interrogation anymore. It is as though we have decided we want to lose in the war on terror under President Obama. That's not my strategy. My strategy will be that the United States will be victorious in the war on terror.
Congressman Paul, my spidey sense tells me we have a debate about to get launched here. I know you have an opinion you'd like to weigh in.
Yes. Torture is illegal, and by our laws, it's illegal by international laws.
How do you define torture, sir?
Well, waterboarding is torture, and many other things. It's illegal under international law and under our law. It's also immoral, and it's also very impractical. There's no evidence that you really get reliable evidence. Why would you accept the position of torturing 100 people because you know one person might have information? And that's what you do when you accept the principle of torture. I think it's uncivilized, and have no practical advantages, and is really un-American to accept on principle that we will torture people that we capture.
And
Major,
that's time.
Major, I have to weigh in on this. I have to say something.
I'm sorry, Congresswoman, just a moment, if you would, please. Let's give Governor Huntsman an opportunity to take 30 seconds on that question.
Gets a little lonely over here in Siberia from time to time.
Tell me about it.
First of all, let me thank the sailor on the ship. I have 2 boys in the United States Navy, and all they want to do is go on to fight, protect, and defend the great freedoms that we share in this country. This country has values. We have a name brand in the world. I've lived overseas 4 times. I've been an ambassador for my country 3 times. I've lived overseas and done business. We diminish our standing in the world, and the values that we project, which include liberty, democracy, human rights, and open markets, when we torture. We should not torture. Waterboarding is torture. We dilute ourselves down like a whole lot of other countries, and we lose that ability to project values that a lot of people in corners of this world are still relying on the United States to stand up for.
And that is time. Thank you, sir. Governor Romney, recently President Obama ordered the death of an American citizen who was suspected of terrorist activity overseas. Is it appropriate for the American president, on the president's say-so alone, to order the death of an American citizen suspected of terrorism?
Absolutely. In this case, this is an individual who had aligned himself with a group that had declared war on the United States of America. And if there's someone that's going to join with a group like Al-Qaeda that declares war on America, and we're in a war with that entity, then of course anyone who is bearing arms with that entity is fair game for the United States of America. Let me go back. Let me go back and just talk for a moment about the issue that a number of people have spoken about, which is their definition of how their foreign policy might be different than this president. My foreign policy is pretty straightforward. I would be guided by an overwhelming conviction that this century must be an American century, where America has the strongest values, the strongest economy, and the strongest military. And an American century means a century where America leads the free world, and the free world leads the entire world. We have a president right now who thinks America is just another nation. America is an exceptional nation. We have a president who thinks that the way to conduct foreign policy is through his personal affects on other people. I believe the way to conduct foreign policy is with American strength. Everything I do will make America stronger, and I will stand and use whatever means necessary within the law to make sure that we protect America's citizens and Americans' rights.
And that's time, Governor. Ladies and gentlemen, the applause are lovely, but we will not have booing. Thank you very much. We'll have courtesy for all of the candidates on the stage. Speaker Gingrich, if I could just ask you the same question. As President of the United States, would you sign that death warrant for an American citizen overseas who you believe is a terrorist suspect?
Well, he's not a terrorist suspect. He's a person who was found guilty under review of actively seeking the death of Americans.
Not found guilty by a court, sir.
He was found guilty by a panel that looked at it and reported to the president.
Well, that's extrajudicial. It's not the rule of law.
It is the rule of law. That is explicitly false. It is the rule of law. No. If you engage in war against the United States, you are an enemy combatant. You have none of the civil liberties of the United States. You cannot go to court. Let me be very clear about this at two levels. There's a huge gap here that frankly, far too many people get confused over. Civil defense, criminal defense, is a function of being within the American law. Waging war on the United States is outside criminal law. It is an act of war and should be dealt with as an act of war, and the correct thing in an act of war is to kill people who are trying to kill you.
Governor Perry, with your indulgence, sir, I'd like to change the subject a little bit to China.